Good evening, everyone. Please just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Please give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. All right, great. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, apologies for last week. Yeah, I had a bit of personal issues that I could not take the class. But yeah, I think we should get up to speed with this week's session. So I'm just gonna recap a little bit on what we've done in the past 3 weeks, just so that whoever is joining today has got a gist of exactly what is happening. Let me just quickly share my screen. Today is not going to be a really long session. I will upload everything because I was doing a bit of documentation in terms of week 1 up until week 4, which is today. So on Friday, I'm going to upload everything on our GitHub repo so that you have everything that we've done so far, and you've got a step-by-step instruction on how to do it so that you learn in that manner. So yeah, without wasting time, I'm just gonna share my screen. Just share screen, Windows, detail screen. Right. Just give me a thumbs up if you see my screen so that we can quickly continue. Great, thank you very much for that. Right. So yeah, what I'm going to speak about is that we are writing our code on our local machine to test out the code and everything. So initially we're running our database on local premises, which is on our machine. But then now we moved our database to AWS RDS instance, right? If you all remember that, we moved it to AWS so that we make it more, nicer and appealing to the next person who's going to see your code or see how your code works. Because if you do everything locally, you don't leverage, the tools that are out there for you to actually showcase that you can use things such as collaborative platforms like GitHub. You cannot use AWS services or Azure or Google cloud platform. So right now, without wasting time, we write our code locally on our machine. We're using VS Code, and then from running our machine locally on VS Code, we push our code to GitHub, right? I'm just gonna find that. We push our code to GitHub. So this is where our code is sitting currently. So this is where the code is. And then if you noticed, I have removed the CI/CD pipeline because I just wanted to show you in the first class how a CI/CD pipeline works. But then on the last day of our 6 weeks, we are going to configure our CI/CD pipeline so that everything is streamlined and is automated, so that you have a complete project from development to testing and then also to deployment, right? And then you use tools such as GitHub, cloud services from AWS. And yeah, I think also that's that. And then we're also going to add infrastructure as code, where we actually deploy infrastructure without actually doing the manual labor. So we use code to deploy infrastructure. For instance, we might write a Lambda function that automates some sort of process for us, right? We might write infrastructure as code that uses an SNS service on AWS that sends bulk emails, right? So that's basically what infrastructure as code is. For instance, if I want to deploy an EC2 instance, instead of me actually going on, like for instance, let me do this. instead of me going to the console here and actually clicking on EC2 instance, and then it's gonna allow me to now start, like for instance, here if I come, let's just give it a second so that it loads the instances. Yeah, for instance here, if you can see, if I can say launch an instance, I'm going to launch a new instance. You see here now, I'm going to name my instance. I'm going to select the OS that is going to run on my instance. I'm going to do a whole lot of other services. I'm going to do a key. I'm going to select a key pair that will allow me to SSH into the EC2 instance. All this I'm doing manually, but all this I can do with a concept that is called infrastructure as code. So I can write code that actually does all these things for me, so that I can quickly provision resources for my application and etc. So this will also allow me to have reusability. Say, for instance, I want to spin up the same EC2 instance with the same configurations. I know where to get the template from because I've already written the code. I just need to run that code. That is what we call infrastructure as code. It makes it easy for us developers to focus a lot on writing logic as opposed to, managing resources and installing all these resources and making sure they're up to date. You can just write a script that deals, we write once and you can update it as the need arises, but we don't need to always do the same thing over and over again. So that's what infrastructure as code is. And it's not only limited to EC2 instances, even for RDS, the database service that we are using, Lambda functions, using your Cloud Watch, S3 buckets, literally anything that you can think of, you can use code as infrastructure. As long as it's a service that you need to deploy, then you use code as infrastructure, right? So now this is our code, where our code is sitting, and we have our EC2 instance that's running, but currently we're not going to use the EC2 instance. We're just going to connect through this management tool here, which is pgadmin4. We're going to use pgadmin4 to connect to our database. I don't know what's happening with it. Why is it doing all this? Okay, let me just restart it. For some reason, it's having issues. Right. All right. So now we've got our application, right? We've got our application that's running. Let me currently go to our application. I don't know why my PC is slow today, but it's fine. We'll deal with it. Right. So now this is how the application looks. pgadmin, management tools for Postgres SQL, right? So that's how this is what you will use to manage any Postgres database wherever it's running, as long as you connect to that database engine that is running your Postgres SQL. Then you can just connect to it and you run that. So if you remember correctly, if I go back to, I just hope my screen is very visible. If I go back to this, I go to RDS. If you remember correctly, I have spun up a DB instance, an RDS DB instance running Postgres SQL. So now if you look at this, you will see that I've got a DB instance. If I click on that, I'm just going to open up everything. Now from there, you will see this is the endpoint that I use to connect to my my Postgres SQL running on that port. So if you see, if I come back to this, okay, it's still starting. It's almost done. So you will see here, I've got my servers that I've already connected to. So see if I drop down that, this is the one that is running on AWS cloud. So this one, the Postgres 17, is the one that runs locally. So let's see if I do that. Looks like I forgot the password again. Right. Okay. Seems I forgot that, but let's open up this one. Right. Okay. I remember. Okay. It seems I remember the one on AWS, the password there. So now if you check, if I go on properties, I go on connection, you will see that the host name matches what? It matches my endpoint that is on there, right? So this tells me that, okay, I'm connecting from my local machine, but I want to connect to a Postgres server that is running on AWS instance on that port. And then I've got the maintenance database or whatever, and then my username is that. And then I just want to connect to that, right? Because I haven't done any changes here, it won't allow me to save. So it saved the previous connection that we had. Right. So now this is the database, right? This is the database. And then these are my schemas. I've got my tables there. So you will see now if I come here, it says users, and then I can just say view all rows. Then you will see that it's going to query my database, and then it's going to show me all the data that is currently present in that table. So you'll see at the moment I've got 3 users with their email addresses, password, and then they've got their roles. I've got only 1 admin and 2 users, right? So now from this, if I go back now to, let's go back to our code. I want us to go back to our code. So now with our code, what it does is, this is currently what I am running, right? This is our code. So we've got the login page, we've got the register page. I don't know why it's taking time to load, but yeah, it's fine. We've got that. Then I can always go back to the login page. But then also our main page is more of just an application, right? Where you've got like some sort of like a portfolio that's happening there. So you can have a portfolio or have some type of website that you're doing or whatever. So this is just a rough template of a portfolio and how it can look like. So you'll see you've got a blog. And then, yeah, on the admin side, you will see that you can add where your users can, add comments. You can either allow users to add comments as guests or only if they are registered on your platform. So this will be the blog. And then when you click on read more, it should take us to another page where it's going to expand on whatever a blog post you've clicked on. But I haven't done that function yet. This is just the boilerplate to kind of show you how things may look. Then you may also have the portfolio part. Our interest now currently is on login or register. So that's our login. So you will see now if I log in as an admin, right? Let's log in. Am I forgetting to use the 𝗟𝗶𝘃𝗀.com, right? That's very interesting. I just used this password before the class. Okay, let me just go and copy. I don't know what's happening with it. My apologies for that, guys. I don't know why it's doing that. Oh, okay. Sorry about that, guys. My back end is not running. So hence it was just saying invalid credentials. It was supposed to actually tell me something about the database of my backend. So that's something that we must also check on that. So my backend is not running, that's why. So if you see here, if I come and drag my backend, you'll see this is my backend. So it's currently not running. If you can see, you just zoom in a bit. So you will see this is my backend. It's currently not running. So let me quickly run it. You will see it's gonna start running. There we go. So it's telling you that we have a server running there. So now if I quickly come there and try and log in now, it's going to log in. So there we go. So we've got our admin dashboard. So admin dashboard currently, what it allows us to do is we can change the role of a user to either a user or an admin, or we can delete a user. So only an admin can do that, right? So now, since we've got our admin and our admin can only delete and update the user role, that is currently what the admin can do at this point. And then also from our application, what I'm writing, it's a blog, right? So the admin will also be able to do what? Let's say, for instance, we assign another role and we say the role is an editor. So when the editor logs in, they will be able to see the part where they actually write the blog, add images, write everything about the blog, and they actually post the blog. Immediately they post the blog, it gets uploaded in our front end. For instance, let me just go there. So in other words, when the editor logs in, they will have their own space also, where they are not just the normal user. They write articles, they write the blog posts and all that. So when they write the blog post and they click submit, it will appear as one of the recent ones that have been posted, and then you'll be able to read more, add comments, engage you, and then only the editor or the professionals that have to do with that particular blog post will comment and respond to the users' comments if they've got any question or any input on that. So this is just our admin currently. Yeah. So now, since this is our admin, I am going to go into our back end. I'm going to go into our back end so that you understand the roots of the admin part that I'm talking about, right? So if you check, we've got routes, right? Routes, these are the endpoints that you use to access certain pages within our application, right? So for instance, if you can see here on user, we get the route admin if we are authenticated as an admin, right? And then if you will see, if I go back to that, you will see that this is our route, right? That's admin. That's the route that we went to when we look at our backend code, right? This is the route that we are currently at, right? And then now, the other important thing that it does is authenticate the user, authenticate the token, authenticate through what? Middleware, right? We've got our middleware here. So immediately you click login, it's going to create a token, right, for authorization. Then after it creates that token, right, it verifies the token via what? Our JWT secret that we've got in our .env file, which is this, our application. This must always be secret, because if this gets lost, I can create the token and log in into the application without any issues, right? So now, this is our middleware. So it ensures that it creates a valid token. Before it does that, it creates a valid token and it verifies it. And then after that, it's going to say, oh, this is the user that's verified. It's going to assign that user to our request body, right? And then it's going to say next. So what is next on our routes? What is next? If everything passes through checking the authentication token and everything is valid, it's going to go to the next, which is what? Our route. There is our route. So that's why now, after you have been successfully authenticated, it takes you to this route. So if you are not successfully authenticated, you are never going to be logged in here. And then if your user is not an admin, you're never going to get to the admin endpoint. You're going to go to the user's endpoint where you are also verified against your token that you are creating when you log in. Right? So that's basically what happens here. So after that, after everything has been authenticated and you are an admin and all that is fine, then what happens? It says it sends what? This is where 𝗟𝗶𝘃𝗀𝗃 comes in with that API endpoint of ours. So find all, this is the same as writing an SQL code as saying select all from users table. So with our 𝗟𝗶𝘃𝗀𝗃 API, what we call, we're just going to say user, because user is what? Is our user model. So it knows that, oh, okay, I'm actually querying my user model, which is user, and then I want to find, you know, all the users. I want to retrieve all the users, fetch all users from the database, and then respond with the list of all the users, right? So when I respond with the list of all the users, this is the backend point, then it returns the JSON, right? Why does it return the JSON? It returns the JSON to my front end. Now let's go to our front end so that we go to our admin dashboard, right? This is our admin dashboard, right? So now you will see here now, after we've logged in, sorry about that. After we've logged in, you will see fetch users. You see, this is where we come in, fetch users, right? So it's going to take what? The token that is stored locally. Remember, we created a token, we stored it. Then we're going to decode that token. This is us verifying that token if it's valid. And then we're going to get the decoded token.id to show that you are an admin, right? Then we're going to do what? We are going to do a get request. From which endpoint? That endpoint, the admin endpoint, right? The reason it's now saying localhost 3000 user admin is because now if I go to the backend code, you will see our admin endpoint, route is there. But now where does the user come from? The user comes from that file name there. So inside the user.js, go and find this route. Hence now you see when we make our request, we say user, then admin. Then it knows that, okay, and then what does it do? It gets the token for what? Its authorization, it's our header. So we have an authorized token, it's valid. Now make a get request to get all my users from that. So what happens there? Filtered users, what I'm saying is response with the data from the user. I want the ID. We're going to check now. Is the user ID, if it's not admin, then there's going to be an error fetching users, because you're not an admin, you're not even supposed to be permitted to be on this endpoint in the first place. But now, if everything is correct and you are an admin, it's going to set users, the filtered users, we're going to set our users, right? So now, from this part now, we've fetched our users. We've set our users on that mode there. You'll see that. We've got our users now there inside that. Now, when we go to our HTML code, right, we want to list all users. So if we go to our front end, you will see now all users, and then it's going to list what? The name of the user, their email, their role. And then now it's going to do what? It's going to have a function that is going to allow us to edit the role of that user and also delete the user. Now, the nice part about this is that you don't have to write the component for each of this. So you've learned your JavaScript, you've learned about for loops, you've learned about while loops, you've learned about how to loop through data. So you're only going to write the structure for one of these things. And then now when you fetch the users, you're just going to iterate and recreate these components dynamically. That's the best part about how React comes in with its component, right? So now let's go there so that you can see what I'm talking about. You will see our headers there. It says all users. And then this is just a message to display if there's an error message or there's a success message from our backend. This is usually for our success message because it's also green. So if it was red, then it means it's an error from the backend. But I made this because you will see now if I come to the code here, let's say I change this to admin. You'll see immediately I change it to admin. It's going to say user role updated successfully. You see that? That's the message that comes from that. So I'm just going to quickly take it back. Then it's going to say user role updated successfully. It's back to that. So now if I come here now, you will see I'm using a map, right? Users.map user, right? And then I've got user ID, and then I've got a user, and then the name, user surname, and then I also have the email, and then the role, right? And then from there onwards, as you will see, I've got what? This is the select option where I select whether I want to change the user role of the current one that I've got there, either to a user or an admin. And then I've got what? The delete button. You see, I've written this code only. This represents only one section. If there was only one user, that code represents only this section. But because I've got two users, when this code runs, it will actually see to say, okay, I'm going through the first user. I'm creating all of this for the first user. And then it will check, oh, I still have another user. Then it will create all this again for the second user. So I don't have to rewrite this code again and go to user number 2, and then it becomes a lengthy code. That's how we take advantage of code reusability, right? So that's basically that. So even if I have 1,000 users, it's going to just use this template code to recreate those users again using the same format. So that's the nice part about this, and how you can leverage code reusability and component usability. So now this is the part where the admin, the admin part, and then we also have a logout, right? So if we go back to our code, for instance, let's go to the logout part. So you will see here now, we've got a button, the logout button, and then on click, handle logout. So handle logout is a function that we've written also on top here, and then I'm just going to say handle logout. So you will see here this function, local storage.remove item token. Remember when we logged in first and we were fetching users, we were getting what? The token from the local storage. But because now I want to log out and clear the session of this particular user when I click log out, I am going to do what? I am going to remove the local storage, and I want to remove token in local storage. And then after that, what do I want to do? I want to navigate to login. So let's see that in action. So I'm just gonna say click, and then you will see that it goes to that. So now, even if, okay, this is not a proper way, you saw that we logged out, right? We came to login. So if I go back to admin, so even if I refresh, you will see that it's still logged in on admin, but there is no user. You have access to the dashboard, but there's no user, right? There's no users or anything. There's no user that's logged in because we've cleared what? The local storage. So I just wanted to demonstrate this, but this is not a safe way to do this. You need to make sure that there is no way that a user can go back to this. So you need to protect this dashboard page under protected routes so that only authenticated users can view this, not just anyone, right? Because even if I did not log in, then I just come and click on admin, it's still gonna bring me here. But this was just for the sole purpose of demonstrating that as long as I log out, I clear the local storage from the token, then there's no way that our data is still safe. But then now I wanted you to see that you can still go to the admin dashboard, but you will not literally do anything because there is no authenticated user, right? So yeah, so we'll as we go through with the class, we do more fine-tuning of the application. I will show you how you can actually protect your routes from being accessed without a user authenticated. Right now, it knows that a user was authenticated, but we cleared um, the local storage, but it's still under the assumption that a user is authenticated, but we don't have that user's token locally. So hence we can't see the user's details, and we can't really do anything with that user's details without the user's details, right? Great. So now what I want us to do is go back to our backend. I think I see a question. Is there a question? Is there a question? I see someone raise their hand. Yes, Donald. Let me allow you to talk. Yeah. Okay, Donald disappeared, but he had raised his hand. Okay. Anyway, no problem. Never mind. Let's carry on. Right. So now this, for instance, now let's look at our update part for this, right? For instance, our update role. This is the part where we update the user role. Remember, we've got two types of roles, a user and an admin, right? So since we've got a user and an admin, what we need to do is on change, we need to pass the user ID and then the target value. The reason we are passing the user ID is because we need to know which role we are changing, for which user are we changing the role for. That is why we are passing the ID. Very important, so that when you go query the database to say update user where ID is this, update the role to that, so that it knows, right? And then that is why even on delete, we're passing the ID so that it knows what user you are deleting. Right, so on update role, on change, we go back to here, handle update role. So we've got the user ID, and then we've got the new role. We are passing the user ID and the new role, right? We get our token again from the local storage to ensure that we are still authorized to do the action that we want to do. And then now what we do is what are we doing? We are updating. Hence we are using that method put. Yeah, we are updating. Hence we are using that put method. So what are we doing now? We want to pass the user ID and the role, right? We want to pass the user ID. So we want to go through here, user on our back end. We'll go through that so that you can see. We're gonna go to user, we pass our ID, then we go to role. For instance, let's say our user ID is 1. So our endpoint is going to be localhost port 3000/user/1 role, right? That's what's going to happen. So if we go to our backend, we go to user, right? We go to, this is our endpoint. Remember, it was user, we've got our ID, our role. We check if you are authenticated. We require the user ID. We get that user ID. We get the role from the body, the request body. Then we check if request.user role is not equals to admin, then we're going to return that only admin access. That's just the precautionary measure that we take all the time, because we need to ensure that only an admin can do these changes. Now here, if we see here, we're going to say user, right? We find user by ID. So we're going to say find by primary key or user ID. So we use our user ID, the one that we got from that, right? From our request body, which is the user ID there. Then now, if the user does not exist, user not found. But then now, if the user does exist on our database, then we are going to say the new user role that we've assigned. We're going to say user.role, and then we save user. So, and then we return what? We return that JSON so that it updates where on our front end, so that it updates on our front end. Let's check that out. Right, so that immediately I change the role here, you will see it updates also on admin. And then if I delete the user, you'll see the user is deleted. Then if I come to, I made a mistake by deleting that user. If I come here and rerun the script, you will see that we will be left with two users, user and an admin, right? But that's not a train smash, we'll fix that. So now, on the code, you will see that, okay, we've passed the ID and the role from our front end. And then if we go to our back end, that is where we actually have that endpoint, and we do all the necessary steps that we update the role. Then after updating the role, we save, and then we return the new user role in JSON format so that we can update our front end. So that's basically what happens in our back end. So now with our delete function, let's go to our delete function, how we handle deleting a user. We've got our handle delete user. So here we just pass the ID. Then you will see when we handle user delete, we just pass the user ID. And then again, we have that method there, delete. This is our endpoint, user, and then the ID. Then from there, you're going to check all this to say you're going to filter the user. User.id is not equals to that. Then you delete the message. I mean, you have the set message, which is user deleted successfully, which is the message that you were seeing in a green code here, as the message was coming to say you've successfully deleted the user, right? So now with that one, the delete endpoint, just want to check the delete endpoint. Okay, that's the one. All right, yeah, this is the one, delete. So as soon as it gets the ID, it knows that it authenticates first, then it checks if you are an admin, then from there it destroys where user destroy where ID equals to the user ID. This is equivalent to delete user where user ID equals to that. So this is what we use there. This is just a way of calling that. Then after that, we do what? We respond with 204 message indicates successful deletion of whatever functionality we're doing, deletion we're doing. So that's basically how our admin dashboard is currently set up as. So after I share the code, your challenge would be to find a way to have an admin actually create staff member accounts. Remember, we've got this part here where only normal users are registering, your users that use your application. But then when the admin is logged in, they must be able to have a panel where they can be able to create users, staff users. For instance, let's say they are creating a blog post, right? Maybe they are also creating reviewers of the blog post. They also want to add maybe some type of special user, right? And then from there onwards, you give those users privileges to do certain functions other than delete users. Only an admin, remember, only an admin can delete users and update user roles. But now the roles that the admin will be creating will be able to maybe post a blog, comment on a blog, oversee the blog posts, etc., etc. Be able to delete the blog posts. Only those, let's say maybe only an editor or a writer of the blog can be able to delete the blog. Even the admin cannot delete the blog. They can only have functions that have to do with users, like deleting users, updating users, etc., etc. Right? That's basically that. And then, yeah, I think that's the challenge that you must work on maybe through the weekend. Try and see if you can be able to do something like that. That's you expanding more on this application. Remember, we are just doing the basic, functions of, what almost all the apps might contain. But then I'm just giving you a step further on how you can improve this application and add more a little bit on it. So now that brings us to the end of today's lesson, but I want to add something. That is very, very important. Say now the users are complaining about unavailability of your application, and you don't have a first point of troubleshooting. Your application on whether what is wrong with it. So what you need to do is have some sort of a health status part where you can actually tell whether all the basic components of your applications are running before you can dive deep into troubleshooting your code or bugs in your code. Sometimes your database may be down and you don't know that, and your application relies a lot on the database, so it cannot run without the database, right? For instance, the application can run, it on the front end, we can run the application like that. We can see the blog post, you can do whatever, you can download your my resume, whatever, you can do all these other things. But now, if the database is not right, if you go on blog posts, you won't see any blog posts, because we are getting our blog posts from where? The back end. It means now our database is not running. Unless your blog posts are hard-coded on your website straight off, which is not a good practice. They must be stored in a database of some sort. Right, so now I want to add that to that dashboard, so that when you get an email to say that we cannot log in on our application, we cannot do this, and that, already you know your first point of reference to check whether are all the systems and services that are supporting my application running. So in this case, is the database running? We want to check if our database is running and have a status that tells us whether the database is running or not, right? For instance, let's add something in terms of that, right? So now what I would want to add is I would want to add an endpoint that tells me if my application is running, right? So now if I come here now, I say I want to add an endpoint that I'm going to use to check if I've got connection to the database, right? So let me just say const. Let's call it check health for application, and then I want to make a call. I want to get from this I want to get, let's say, HTTP, right? HTTP localhost. Tell me if you can still see my screen. You can see my screen. Please give me a thumbs up if everything is visible, whatever I'm typing. Give me a thumbs up. Okay, I see there's a question. Donald, I see you have a question. Is it a question or? All right, no question, I guess. Okay, let's continue. So I'm going to have that localhost, and then obviously we're still running on port 3000, and then I want to do a health check, right? So from this health, this is the endpoint for my health check, right? Okay, I think I made a mistake there. I'm supposed to actually do this because I sync, and to do that. Yeah. Sorry about that. Then I need to try and do that. So I'm going to say const. Then I want the response. From the response, then I'll wait. I want to use Axios. And then I want to get then HTTP localhost port 3000, and then to say health, right? So from there I can close that, and then I'm going to say I actually had this someone top there. All right, I'm just gonna do that. I'm gonna say set health. Let's just say call it health status, right? Then from there I want to say response. Then from response from the data I want to get status, right? I want to get status from that. Yeah, I want to get the status, and then from there then I also want to pass and then update to say the status is held, right? Then I'm going to say catch. What are we catching? So we're going to set our health status. So I need to catch an error here. So that's right. So now I need to set that, and then I'm going to say unhealthy, right? And from there, I'm going to say, let's just say console. Let's just use console.error. And then I'm going to say error checking health. Then I'm going to pass the error there. It's going to tell me whatever error there that I've done, right? Now, there's something that I'm doing here, right? Does anyone know what I'm doing wrong currently? I just want to see if you're following along. Please use the comment section or the chat section to, or the Q&A section to tell me what I am currently doing wrong. From what we've learned from the first class up until now, what is it that I am doing wrong? What is wrong with this code that I've just written here? Come on, guys. This is a rookie mistake. Anyone? Okay, I see someone says set the health status or the set health status. Yeah, I do get that. But some way it's not right. But what is wrong with this code here? This is the back end, by the way. This is the back end. What is wrong with this code? This is the back end. Remember, this is the back end. Okay. I see anyone? Let me give it a minute. Anyone, guys? What is wrong with this code? Anyone? Okay, because we're running out of time, let me continue. Okay, firstly, I'm making, nope, not error handling. Firstly, I am making a request. But where am I making this request? Because already this is the back end. So this tells you that this code must be on the front end, not on the back end, because this is a request already. I'm making a get request. So I can't make a get request on my back end code. So this code is not supposed to be in the back end, but it's supposed to be where? On the front end code. So I'm just gonna cut that. Then we go to our front end. And then where do we put our code? I want to make this call Specifically, I want to make this call somewhere on the admin dash. Yeah, let me put it here. After fetching when fetching the users, I also want to check the health status, right? I want to check the health status of my application. I want to check the health status of my application. Okay, give me a second. Give me a second, guys. Yeah, I want to also check. Let me just do that. That's not the proper way of writing that. Yeah, right. So I've got this. You see there we've got it. We've got the everything set up there for setting our health status. That will be our health status, right? So since that's our health status there, so I've got check health, and then I'm making what? I'm making a request to the back end, right? I'm making a request to the back end on health so that it checks my database connection, and then it will return whether with this status or that status. And then now what I need to do is I need to just call this again here. That's that. So now everything is set up to check the health of my application, right? But then now I need to find a way to show that health status. So after the admin dashboard, what will I do? I'm just gonna add, let's add a health status. I'm just gonna add health status, right? Then I'm just gonna add a div. I don't know last time I wrote divs. Okay, I'm just gonna add. Then I'm just gonna have a class name, and it's gonna give me that. Okay, I'm just gonna have a margin bottom of 4, heading of 2, and then I want to center the text. Then let's give it white color, and then I want to give it BG green. Let's see if I find right. Then I want to have rounded corners, large. Yeah, that's about that. And then I want to have this text as server health, right? And then what do I need to do? I need to pass on health status, which is the function that I wrote about, right? Of which is this function here, there, right? Yeah. So about that, of which it's actually that health status, the one that we've set. Then we're going to show it here to say that's the health status, right? Now I'm just gonna save and see if it does run. Now the big part now is we need to also go to where we need to also go and fix our back end, because now we do have the code and the code is running, but now our back end, what does our back end say, right? We need to go to our back end so that we also do that. So now if I come to the back end code, remember our back end code. Our back end code must check and authenticate. It must check and authenticate. What's this? The database connection. So when the database connection is successful, then what it means is that it's connected and the app is healthy. Let me just do that, because I previously written the code here. I don't want to rewrite that. Right. So now I'm just gonna have the endpoint here. App get, this is our health, right? If you remember, if we go to our front end, this is where we are making this is where we are making that call here to say put 3000 health, and then that's the endpoint, right? And then we're going to sequelize, and then we authenticate. Then our labels health check status is up, database connected, right? So basically, when we say authenticate, sequelize, authenticate, we are calling our database connection. This is what we are calling. We are calling our database connection, which is authenticate, and that is going to connect to say it's established or there's a database connection error there. So at the moment we've set up everything correctly. Then you see here if there's an error, it means now the health check, and then the status, the database is down, then database is disconnected. So now if we come back to, okay, we must run our backend server again. Then let me just run the backend server, make sure that it's running. Right, it's running. So now if I come back to this, you will see now it's saying server. Okay, let me just log out. Just taken the fun already from what I wanted to show you. 𝗟𝗶𝘃𝗀@gmail.com. Then 0. Okay. So you see the server health is up, right? So at the moment, it means that our backend is running. Our backend is currently running. Hence, you see that our application is healthy because it's got all the services running. There's nothing wrong with our application. Say now, for instance, your application also needed other services. Let's say it was also connecting to other services. So you need to also do those checks to see if those services are up and running before the application can actually run as well, so that you ensure that you've got your first point of reference where you troubleshoot what could be wrong with the application, right? Never mind where you do tests for your application, but this is now just the basic way of testing your application against the services that it needs for it to do the functions that it needs to do. For instance, now if I was to stop this server and then I come back this side. So now what you need to do here is to make this more advanced. You can always have a function that checks every 1 second to check the health status of the app. So in our case, we didn't implement that. We just need to refresh. That's how you will make your application even way more better, because it will keep checking. So you will see here, it's going to say, you saw that it was saying checking the health, checking, then it checks, okay, I can't connect, so it's unhealthy. So another better thing you can do is that when it returns unhealthy, you can change the green background to red to show that there's danger, right? At the moment, it's just green. That is something else that you can check. I do. Okay, we need to change that as well. Right, okay. Because our backend is not running, I will not be able to log in. So let me just go back and so you see now, this is the point where you need to do thorough thinking in terms of your infrastructure. So at this point in time, my infrastructure is a monolith because it's got a single point of failure. So for as long as my background is not, my backend is not running, nothing else will run. So for instance, now I might run a microservices where I've got a separate API to check the health status. I've got a separate API to do admin functions. I've got a separate API to do certain other tasks, so that even if the health status checking API is down, the other parts of the application is still working and you can still use them. Hence, sometimes if you check FNB when they're doing maintenance, especially on Sunday midnight, you'll see that sometimes you cannot send an e-wallet, you cannot buy airtime. but you can still log in and transfer money and do other functions. That is what we call a microservices architecture, because you can do other certain things without being interrupted by the services that are down currently. So yeah, let me just go back and run the back end again so that we can log in and check that. So at the moment, you see, I can only show you that function only if you see the server is up now, it's running. It means I'm connected to the backend. So you know already that your database is connected and everything that the application needs is up and running. So yeah, I think that's the other thing that I wanted to check. We'll expand more on the health status application. We'll add more services to this just to kind of show you the process of going through each. Let's say, for instance, before the application can actually even spin up and run, we need to check the database connection first. If it fails, then the application doesn't even open. You will see this mostly with mobile apps. They'll tell you that before the game can play, it needs to connect to the game servers. If it doesn't connect, the game doesn't run. So that's basically what we need to do. Those are the other services that your application needs before it can even run. So in our case, our front end can run, but it still needs the back end and database connection for it to fully function the way it's supposed to. So yeah, with that said, I think that brings us to the final stage of our class today. So if there are no other questions, because I don't see any questions, if there's no other questions or comments, I will upload everything on Friday. So please, whoever from Melsoft Academy, can you please just send me a reminder on email so that I post everything Friday latest, so that they've got everything from the first session up until today, and then we'll increment on that as we go further. Thank you very much for joining us today, guys. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you on the next class. Thank you.